The Unholy Alliance, how two matriarchs forged a war for the soul of Port Charles. In the tempestuous, ever-shifting landscape of Port Charles, where power is a currency more volatile than cash and loyalty is a fragile commodity, a new storm is brewing. This is not a mere squall of personal grievance or a passing corporate feud. This is a seismic event, a calculated, cold-blooded recalibration of the very foundations of the town's most powerful dynasties. At the epicenter of this earthquake is an alliance so unthinkable, so strategically potent, that its formation alone signals the end of an era. Two of the town's most formidable and historically antagonistic matriarchs, Carly Spencer and Tracy Quartermain, have joined forces. Their union, born not of trust but of a chillingly clear necessity, has initiated a war that threatens to consume everyone in its path. At the heart of their crusade is one man, Drew Kane, whose carefully constructed world is nearing its violent, inevitable collapse. But Drew is only the beginning. This is a full-scale reckoning, and in the eyes of Carly and Tracy, the time for half measures is over. The facade of power and the cancer within. On the surface, the power structures of Port Charles appeared to be settling. Michael Corinthos, a man long caught between the legacy of his father and the ambition of his own making, seemed to have finally consolidated his influence. His protracted custody battle had ended in his favor, securing his role as a father. His relationship with Sasha Gilmore was evolving, offering a veneer of personal stability. His corporate responsibilities at YLQ remained intact. From an outsider's perspective, Michael's position was secure. But beneath this placid facade, something darker was fermenting, a corruption that threatened not only to redefine his future, but to expose just how fragile his grip on control had become. The source of this decay, as spoilers reveal, was not an external enemy in the shadows, but a man he once called family, Drew Kane. Drew, a man whose charm has long masked an increasingly erratic and self-serving agenda, was caught in a rapidly accelerating power game of his own design. While Michael believed his world was being solidified, Drew was quietly rewriting the very documents that underpinned it. Whispers began to circulate of legal recalculations, of shocking inheritance rewrites, and of deep betrayals that struck at the heart of the Quartermain and Corinthos legacies. The latest twist centers on key legal and financial documents, the sacred YLQ trust, and various custody agreements, which Drew appears to have quietly manipulated not to secure Michael's future, but to favor his own insidious ambitions. The implications are devastating. It means that Michael's assumed rights over his children, Wiley and Amelia, and even core elements of the Quartermain inheritance, were under a silent, predatory siege. The very foundation of his power was being chipped away, not by a declared rival, but by someone who had used the pretense of family to gain access he never truly earned. As this ticking time bomb neared detonation, two women, standing on opposite sides of a long and bitter history, began to see the same terrifying truth. The awakening, an alliance forged in fury and legacy. For Carly Spencer, the realization was a slow burn of betrayal that finally ignited into a consuming fire. Her instincts, honed to a razor's edge by years of surviving in a town fueled by deceit, began to flare with increasing urgency. She sensed that Drew's influence was not just toxic, it was corrosive. There was something unspoken and unnerving in the way he watched Willow, something manipulative in how he intertwined himself into decisions affecting not just Willow, but Michael and the Quartermains at large. Carly's suspicion morphed into a cold, hard obsession. She was no longer willing to stay silent, not when she could see Michael being blindsided in slow motion by a man playing a long and dangerous game. To Carly, this was more than just a power play, it was a deeply personal violation. After witnessing Drew manipulate Wiley's perception of Michael, implying his father had emotionally abandoned him for a replacement child, she could no longer stomach his presence. She had watched him gaslight Willow, push for a performative wedding to salvage a damaged reputation, and subtly erase Michael's authority as a father and partner. This was not just a betrayal of trust. In Carly's eyes, it was a form of psychological abuse, a weaponized intimacy. It was something she had seen before in her tumultuous life, and something she swore she would never allow to happen under her roof again. Her mission became clear. Destroy Drew. Not just embarrass him, not simply exile him, but erase him professionally, socially, and personally. Meanwhile, Tracy Quartermaine, the indomitable guardian of the Quartermaine name, reached her own breaking point. For decades, she has guarded the family legacy with ruthless precision. She has watched men like Drew crawl their way into the family, and she has crushed every one of them. In her eyes, Drew was no longer a protector of the family name. He was a predator using it as a shield. His clandestine dealings with Ezra Boyle were not mere business missteps, but an existential threat to the Quartermaine empire. Tracy doesn't see Nina Reeves as simply toxic. She sees her as a virus, and viruses must be eradicated. She has no intention of letting Drew be the one that gets away with it. In a move no one could have anticipated, these two forces of nature, Carly and Tracy, began coordinating behind closed doors. Theirs is not an alliance born of love or forgiveness, but of cold, strategic necessity. Together, they represent a perfect storm. One wields the emotional intelligence and street-level instinct of a survivor, while the other holds the generational power, institutional reach, and judicial influence of a dynasty. This is the change no one saw coming, a structural realignment of power in Port Charles. It began with Drew, but he was never the final target. He was the proving ground. The Purge, a campaign of institutional erasure. What makes this new evolution of power so shocking is how quiet it is. Carly and Tracy are not storming into rooms demanding respect. They are reorganizing them from within. They are building alliances not with overt declarations, but through favors called in, secrets kept, and deaths remembered. What they are constructing is not just temporary leverage, it is infrastructure. It is systemic control, the kind of power that outlasts headlines, trials, and rivalries. This new coordination is not a simple vendetta, it is a cleansing. The adjustment now taking place across every corridor of influence, from the Metro Court to the Q Estate, from the courthouse to the police department, is not subtle. It is sharp, ruthless, and strategic. Carly and Tracy have begun redistributing power like seasoned political operatives. Weak links are being cut, allies are being vetted, and silent loyalty is being demanded. The fallout has been immediate and devastating. Nina Reeves is already unraveling. Her relationship with Sonny is tenuous at best, and her social capital is evaporating before her eyes as she is frozen out of the circles she once dominated. Every time she steps into a room with Carly or Tracy, she can feel the walls closing in. Willow's credibility is similarly eroding under the weight of whispers and rumors, none of which are directly traceable back to Carly or Tracy, yet all of which bear their fingerprints. Even Sonny, the town's long-standing pillar of force, is beginning to look like an outsider in a game he no longer controls. Because while Sonny plays chess with territory and loyalty, Carly and Tracy are redefining the entire board. What was once personal for Carly has become a strategic mission. What was once a defensive legacy for Tracy has become generational warfare. Their new, expanded target is not just Drew, but the liabilities he brought into their sphere, Nina and Willow. In their cold, calculated eyes, Nina and Willow are no longer people. They are errors that must be corrected. For Carly, her war with Nina has been years in the making, a slow burn of betrayal, vengeance, custody battles, and heartbreak. She has finally come to a place where she understands that Nina's continued proximity to her family, her grandchildren, and her legacy is not just painful, it's corrosive. For Tracy, Willow's emotional instability and her unpredictable connection to Drew are no longer just a threat to herself. They are a threat to the family brand. The Quartermaines cannot afford to be associated with scandal, least of all a scandal that could end in institutionalization, courtroom humiliation, or worse. A new world order. Port Charles has always been a town ruled by men, Sonny with his fists, Victor with his threats, Drew with his polish, and even Michael with his quiet corporate force. But now the axis is shifting. As the power reconfigures, what is emerging is not a vacuum, but a new center of gravity: Carly and Tracy. These two women, once defined by the men around them, are now defining the rules for everyone else. Their names are being whispered not in fear of scandal, but in awe of efficiency. No one moves without considering how it might play to Carly. No business deal proceeds without clearing Tracy's line of sight. This balance of influence, so delicately weighted, is beginning to change the very way decisions are made across the entire town. Carly has begun feeding information to Jason. Tracy has begun lobbying judges and trustees. Minor allies like Martin Gray, Diane Miller, and Olivia are beginning to sense the shift. Something bigger is coming. Drew, as always, is dangerous when cornered. There is no version of this man who accepts defeat quietly. Already, he's begun preparing contingency plans, threats to leak dirt on Carly's past, rumors he may spread about Tracy's finances, even subtle legal moves to protect his shares in YLQ. But every move he makes only justifies the takedown. Every deflection, every half-truth, every private conversation with Willow that ends in confusion and tears, these are not the acts of a man saving his reputation. These are the final gasps of a man who knows he's being hunted. And yet, beneath all this momentum lies one unavoidable truth: power never shifts without consequence. Carly and Tracy's rise is already sending shockwaves across families, marriages, and long-standing alliances. Sasha has pulled back from Carly. Michael is beginning to question how far his mother is willing to go. Jason, loyal to Carly but bound by a moral code she no longer seems to recognize, is watching with growing unease. Even Brooklyn is wary of how Tracy's decisions could splinter the Quartermaine legacy from within. The new order is ascending, but it is also isolating. Because when two women consolidate this much influence in a town built on secrets, resentment becomes the byproduct of control. And while Carly and Tracy may be in control now, they may have forgotten one crucial rule: when you burn witches, the smoke never stays in your lungs. It drifts, it spreads, and it eventually returns to the ones who lit the fire. This is no longer a town ruled by crime or commerce. This is a town ruled by calculation. And in this new chapter, Carly Spencer and Tracy Quartermaine are writing the story, line by line, move by move, making one thing perfectly clear to every soul in Port Charles: there's a new empire rising, and it doesn't wear a crown. It wears heels. Thanks for watching this videos. Please hit the subscribe button for more updated news.